as the Editage Training Manager. Also, the honorable speakers for today from Medical Journal of Indonesia, Professor Dr. Rianto Setiabudi, Specialist Pharmacology Klinis, and Professor Dr. Melva Louisa. And the honorable speaker for today from Editage, Dr. Jacob Wickham and Vanessa Khan. Last but not least, our honorable participant in this academic writing webinar about how to succeed in publishing research in international journal. Please let me introduce myself. I am Marsha Maira, an editor assistant from the Medical Journal of Indonesia that will be your MC for today's session. Therefore, I will show you today's rundown on the screen. Okay, the webinar will be started by singing the national anthem, Indonesia Raya. After that, we will have a session to fill out a pre-test by the participant. The next session is the opening speech from Professor Dr. Ari Fahrialsyam as the Dean Faculty of Medicine of the University of Indonesia. Then, we will have 4 sessions to cover all of our topics, followed by a Q&A session for each topic. Lastly, there will be another session to fill out the post-test and feedback from the participant. Okay, we may start the webinar now. Ladies and gentlemen, we will sing our national anthem Indonesia Raya together. The song may start. Thank you. Before we get into the next part, we want to invite all of the participants to take a picture together. Please turn on your camera so we can get a better view for each participant. I will count from 1 to 3 several times, and my team will screenshot each page one by one. Please turn on your camera. Um, okay, yeah. Okay, we may start the picture now. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, next slide. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, I think one more time. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, thank you. Also, we would like to inform you that we have sent the pre-test link to the chat room below. Please fill out the form first before we get into the first session. You can check it on the chat room below for the link. Okay. We have sent the pretest link on the chat room below. You can start to fill out the pretest link first before we start into the session for today. Okay, the next part is an opening speech by the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine of the University of Indonesia. We will invite Professor Dr. Ari Fahrialsyam to give some speeches on this great morning. For Professor Ari, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Profesor Agus Rizal Hamid, Editor-in-Chief Medical Journal of Indonesia, and also the head of organizing committee for today's event, Professor Dr. Rianto Setiabudy, Editorial Board, Medical Journal Indonesia, and also we have Professor Dr. Melva, Louisa, M.Biomed, and also we have Dr. Jacob Wickham, Senior Managing Director, Integrative Zoology, and also we have Vanessa, PhD, Data Scientist and Neuroscientist. Good morning and welcome to everyone of you joining event on how to succeed in publishing research in international journals with the topics of brought to you by Medical Journal of Indonesia and Editage. Here I am honored to stand before you today as a Dean of Medicine plus Indonesia to open an event that promises to both enlightening and transformative for aspiring and seasoned researchers alike. The journey to successful publication in international journals is fraught and with challenges, yet it is a path that offers immense rewards, not only in terms of academic recognitions, but also in contributing to the global body of knowledge that can impact healthcare outcomes worldwide. Today's webinar, is designed to simplify the publication process, offering your practical insight and strategies to enhance your research visibility and credibility. We have gathered a panel of distinguished speakers who bring a wealth of experience in academic publishing that I mentioned all the speakers, navigating the peer review process, choosing the right journals, and effectively responding to feedback. As academic and researchers, our commitment to advancing medical science and improving patient care hinges on our ability to disseminate our findings widely and effectively. We believe that today's session will equip you with the tools and confidence to achieve these goals, enabling your research to make a profound and lasting impact. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed speakers for their willingness to share their expertise, experience for you to, and for taking time to join us today. Without further ado, let us embark this journey together with the shared aim of elevating the quality and reach of our research through successful publication in international journals. Thank you for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Ari, for this amazing speech this morning. Yeah, we would also say thank you for you to all your support for the Medical Journal of Indonesia. It's time to do for the main session, but before we start it, we will invite Dr. Windu Cahyaningrum Handayani to be our moderator for today's session. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Windu.
Thank you, Marcia, for the introduction. Okay, good day, everyone. Welcome to the highly anticipated webinar, How to Succeed in Publishing Research in International Journal, brought to you through the collaborative efforts of Medical Journal of Indonesia and Editage. My name is Windu, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. We have an exciting lineup of the speakers who are experts in their respective fields, and they will share their wealth of knowledge and provide practical insights and strategies on various topics. But before we start, let me go over a few housekeeping tip items. Okay, and this webinar will be recorded. Please mute your microphone to minimize background noise during the presentation so our speakers don't get disturbed. And there will be a Q&A session after each presentation. So please hold your question until then. Okay, thank you once again for joining us. Let's embark on this rewarding journey together. Now, let's start with our first session. I would like to invite Vanessa Khan to share her insights, but beforehand, it's my pleasure to introduce Vanessa Khan as our speaker. Vanessa is a data scientist and a neuroscientist with wealth of knowledge in data analysis. She has made significant contributions to many projects. Today, she will be sharing insights on structuring your manuscript to impress journal editors. We are indeed privileged to have her with us today. Okay, without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Vanessa Khan.
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to speak to all of you about how to structure your manuscript to impress journal editors. This is a very exciting part of your research where you get to share your results with the world. So this session is sponsored by Editage, and their goal is to make researchers successful and to make research consumable. They have collaborated with over 2,500 scientific collaborators worldwide and also recommended by over 2,000 journals. This is their brand new website for Indonesian researchers, editage.id. And it is designed to meet the unique needs of the vibrant and dynamic research community in Indonesia, from language editing and manuscript review to academic consulting. Editage specialized services are now very easily accessible to support the scholarly pursuits of researchers across Indonesia. So let's jump into how we're gonna structure a manuscript. So the main body of the manuscript will start with talking about the introduction, materials and methods, results, and discussion. So the manuscript should follow this IMRAD format. And the main questions that we want to answer in the manuscript is, why did you start? Which is something that you talk about in the introduction, where you talk about the background of your research as well as your hypothesis. Then you will talk about how you went about the research, which is the method section. Then you talk about what you found, which is the results, which includes major findings, as well as what the results mean. This is what you will be discussing in the discussion, where you also talk about the significance of your work. So here you can see the shape of a scientific research article. First of all, we have the introduction, which is more general. Then you would narrow your focus to the specific problem that you studied. And you would also state your study rationale and aims. And so here we look at the shape again, right? You go from very narrow and then, very broad to very narrow, which is when you draw the reader to the point of the study. So in the introduction, you first establish some background information about your research area. Then you identify a research problem. And this is the exciting part when your paper becomes the solution. So here, we saw the shape of the article earlier, and this part here refers to the introduction. So like I mentioned earlier, the introduction should begin broadly, where people can get a brief understanding of your research area. For example, individuals differ vertically from one another in the degree to which they are willing and able to express their emotions. Then goes a bit more specific. Indeed, the popular view is that such emotional expressiveness is a central difference between men and women, but the evidence is mixed. Then your paper offers the solution. In this study, we recorded the emotional reactions of both men and women to filmed blah, blah, blah. So here you can see how the sentences go from more broad sense to a more narrow that focuses on your research. But how do we write an effective introduction? You need to always remember that your introduction of the paper answers the question, why? So you, in the introduction, must provide a rationale for the current study and also state the aim. Ask yourself these questions as you're writing or planning, like what gap in the knowledge did you try to fill? And what controversy did you try to resolve? Then you also need to explain to your audience why the problem is important. Why should they care and why should they read your manuscript? Give people a general background of what has been done so far to solve the problem, and then emphasize and introduce your study, how your study is different from previous research, and actually more specifically, how your study fills the research gap. So like any kind of writing, it's important to pay attention to the grammar, and grammar also reflects how professional your writing is. So when you consider verb tenses for the introduction, you would use present tense to identify a fact or practice that's generally accepted in the field. And you would use past tense when you're describing the results of individual experiments. And you would use present perfect tense to summarize or generalize about like research in the field or general trends in society where there is no specific time or date. And you would use present continuous or passive voice when you're describing an ongoing situation. So some essential checks when you write the introduction is to look for any key terms and concepts that have been defined. Look for and make sure that all the statements that require citation have been referenced. Then make sure to also talk about your research rationale, right? The novelty of your research, right? How your study is different from the others. And then also clearly define the aim and hypothesis, as well as making sure that there's been relevant and recent background literature provided, right, for the current study, such that a general audience, a general research audience can understand and keep up with what you're talking about. Then we come to the narrower part of the hourglass that we saw earlier, and this is the methods and results section. It becomes narrower as it becomes more specific. For example, in the methods, you focus on more details of your study, right? 100 male and 100 female undergraduates were shown one of the two movies. Then in the results, you would describe what's being shown or what's been done, the insights that you draw from your data. An example of that is table 1 shows that men in the father watching condition cried significantly more. Now let's go a little bit more in depth about each of these sections. So the method section should enable people to repeat your study and get similar or if not the same results. And this part of this manuscript answers the question, how? This section specifically explains how you've obtained your study results, right? So asking questions like what has been done, what did you look for, and how it was done. To publish, especially, in general, when you publish a manuscript, you need to make sure that the study is reproducible. And this is why this method section is very important. You need to make sure that you include enough details such that other researchers can repeat the experiment, right? So you provide the sources of material, make a model of equipment, quantities, duration, reasons, etc. You would also then describe what the treatments were and how you arrange for appropriate controls such that valid comparisons can be made between the two sets. This is probably the easiest section to write, and it's a good idea to start writing the methods because you did everything and you are the expert in this and you're simply describing what you have done. So what do we need to include for the method section? We need to include enough detail such that readers can understand how experiments were done. You can also use figures here to show how the experiment was set up. Also provide detailed version of procedures in the supplemental data if needed, and state funding sources and also adherence to institutional review board guidelines if needed. Again, let's talk a little bit about grammar in the method section. Since the method section includes statements about what you did to answer the question, the entire section is written in past tense. Use simple past tense or like passive voice, which is very common. Like, for example, the essay was performed, blah, blah. Active voice is also acceptable. You can say we performed this experiment, or we evaluated the results, or we developed this method. There are rare chances where you need to use present tense, and it is used only when describing how data are presented in the paper. Because this information is still true, right? So for example, you can say data are summarized as mean, blah, blah, right? So this is still a fact, right? Not something, not describing something you did. So some essential checks after you've written the method section is to make sure that you are as specific and detailed as possible. The aim, right, is again to facilitate reproducibility. Give information on design, sample, selection criteria, ethics, trial registration, and consent details when applicable. Use diagrams, right, and flowcharts to help describe, for example, how you designed the experiment, and also include a data analysis section to explain why you picked this specific analysis method or statistics to answer the research questions. So now that we've talked about methods, we'll move on and talk about results. So this part of the manuscript answers the question what you found. So you state only the results, and anything other than that, right, like comments and explanations of the results they are used or like written in the discussion session. And so for results, you ask yourself what are your major findings, right? And also make sure you answer all the points that were raised in the methods section. Here you can use tables and charts whenever needed, right? But don't simply duplicate the data by presenting the same data once as a table and once as a graph, because this is simply redundant. You should pick one that's most effective in conveying your message. Make sure to also check that there are no mismatch in numbers between the text as well as the tables and figures. So in theory, this section can be the shortest of the IMRAD format because a lot of information can be presented in tables and or figures. So when do you use tables and figures? You can use a table to show numerous values or other data in a small space, to compare values or statistics among different groups, as well as to show the presence or absence of specific characteristics. And use a figure to show trends, patterns, and relationships in data when the general pattern is more important than the exact values. or you can use a figure to illustrate a sequence of events, procedures, geographical features, or physical characteristics. When you're designing a figure, make sure that they are informative and self-explanatory. Excuse me. So figures, they offer readers a quick overview of the major study findings, and they help readers better understand the study results. And so figures themselves should have a brief description, right, a figure legend that give the reader sufficient information to know how the data were produced. So this means that when you read a manuscript or read a paper, you go directly to the first figure. You should be able to understand how the study was designed and kind of the overall goal of the study, just as an example. Here, this is also a good use of figure, right? So you can see here a staining of synaptotagmin and also PSD95 as and how it looks like under different conditions. And so you can see that here a figure legend is provided, right, for us to understand what we're looking at first, right? And second, what each of these white arrow means in the figure, and also how big the image is. And so this is an example of when it's effective to use a figure, right? This is something you cannot describe and simply put in the form of a table and still get the same results or impression. Here is an example of an unnecessary figure when you show 2 bars, the percentage of male and female, which you can simply replace by saying 63%, 63.4% were women, right? So make sure to only use figures and tables when needed. And when you use it, make sure it conveys your message in a clear manner. So some important points again, right? Use titles and legends when needed. And also make sure that the legends are short and precise, right? No one expects a huge paragraph, but rather you get straight to the point of what's being shown, and also describe all the details needed to understand the figure. And both figures and tables should be able to stand alone, and you should never present the same data in tables and figures. That would be redundant. So when it comes to the checklist for the results section, make sure you state the most important results first, and also use journal prescribed format for reporting results and statistics, and make sure to use tables, right? For example, when you provide data characteristics, when you're reporting full results for extensive comparisons, for example, p-value, confidence intervals, as well as effect size. Make sure to use figures to highlight significant findings and key results that will be discussed further in the discussion. And also provide table and figure legends to make sure that they can stand alone and there's enough information for readers to interpret what's going on. So here, make sure that the results are written in past tense, right? Because they are events that occurred in the past. And use present tense, again, only when you're referring readers to the data, right? Specifically to the figures and tables. An example of that would be all parameters used to estimate the number of excess deaths in Thailand are shown in supplementary file 2. So now we go on and talk about move to like a broader part of the hourglass again, the discussion. So the discussion begins with a statement of your main findings. For example, we observed that sex differences in emotional expressiveness are moderated by 2 kinds of variables. The discussion then broadens, right? So first, here you have the narrow part where you talk about your study, and then you go on and talk about how it applies to the overall field, right? Not since Charles Darwin's first observations has psychology contributed as much new information, blah, blah, blah. And then you go even further and wider. If emotions can incarcerate us by hiding our complexity, at least their expression can liberate us by displaying our authenticity. So let's dig a little bit deeper, right? So the discussion section should answer the question now, so what? Specifically, this part should explain what the results mean and how they're important. You should also compare the results with earlier findings, right? If there are contradictory results, you should explain what happened here. And if some results are not statistically different, right? Explain that any differences seen may have been due to chance. Also make sure to explain how your research has moved the body of scientific knowledge forward, right? What have you contributed to the field? Or how did this study contribute to the field, right? Outline the limitations of the study and also suggest a future line of work. And in the very end, sum up with a conclusion. So here, make sure that you don't extend your conclusions beyond what is directly supported by your results, right? You should, everything that your conclusion should be summarizing what your research, what the study described in this manuscript has shown and can support. When it comes to writing the discussion, sometimes the results, discussion, and conclusion may be separated or combined. And this you have to check with the individual journal that you would like to submit to, right? And you should prepare your manuscript accordingly, right? Adhere to all the guidelines. Make sure in the discussion to also include a take-home message. Imagine if you're someone reading a paper and you're skimming through it, right? What should I know, or like, what should I remember after reading this paper? And when it comes to the essential checklist, make sure that you discuss the results in the context of the research aims and previous literature, right? Acknowledge any conflicting or unexpected results. Don't simply repeat what you've already discussed in the results section, right? The discussion part is like the brainy part where you kind of answer the big picture question, right? How does your study contribute to the field and also fill the research gap? And in the discussion, you also talk about how you, what other studies can be done to fill different research gaps that's generated by your study. And make sure to don't exaggerate or overgeneralize, right? That everything you say in the discussion should be supported by your results. And don't forget to mention limitations as well as strengths, and suggest implications and new hypotheses that warrant further investigation. So in the conclusion, and also not all journals have a conclusion. Sometimes it could be the last sentence of the discussion, but if it does, make sure to state conclusions in a clear and simple language, right? Don't simply reiterate results or the discussion. You should here in this part indicate opportunities for future research, if not already stated in the discussion section, right? The conclusion is a place for you to really persuasively and succinctly restate your research problem, given that the reader now knows all the information that you've presented about it. Then we talked about the IMRAD structure. Now we move on and talk a little bit about citations and references. So a citation is a mention of the original source in the main text of a document, whereas a reference or reference list is a complete list of citations that appears at the very end of the document. So you can see here in-text citation in Vancouver style, that's in square brackets with numbers. And in the form of a reference list, then you can see what each of these numbers, what publications or reference each of these numbers refer to. And there are also different styles, right? Earlier I showed you the Vancouver style, then there's also the Harvard style. And make sure again to check the journal provided guidelines with regard to which style you should be using, right? You can use reference management applications to simplify the process for you. And some examples of that would be Mendeley and EndNote. So I've talked about pretty much the bottom parts of the manuscript. So now let's talk about the title, which is actually mentioned on the very first page of your paper. So when you're writing a title, it should be clear, succinct, and informative, right? Make sure you should know that that most people do indeed fall prey to judging a book by its cover. And readers come across research paper titles when they search in databases and reference sections of papers. And so by looking at the title, they kind of deduce what a paper is about and its relevance to them based on the title. And considering this, it is clear the title of your paper is the most important determinant of how many people will read it. And so a good title should capture the reader's attention, differentiates the paper from other papers of the same subject area, also condenses the paper's content in a few keywords, and contains keywords that indicate what a paper is about. For example, independent variables manipulated, dependent variables measured, study animal or population used, condition of animal or subjects during the study, as well as the experimental approach. And authorship entails responsibility, and make sure that everyone who has made significant contributions are recognized, and that all the authors approve the final version of the paper and will also publicly defend the data as well as conclusions. And a lot of journals also provide guidelines for that. And then there comes the abstract, right? And remember that an effective abstract enlightens and also engages readers, makes people want to read your manuscript. And so when you write an abstract, make sure that, so it should be a miniature of the IMRAD, right? And it's also an independent part of the paper, typically with a word limit of 250 words. And it should really be clear, concise, and to the point, right? Limit the use of abbreviations so that people can simply read it and understand what's it's about. And it's usually written last because it really is a huge summary of your paper. Make sure to also follow instructions given by the journal when you're writing the abstract. And then comes the keywords, which enable readers to locate your paper. So the keywords is the label of your work, right? They are the words that make your paper searchable, right? And also ensure that you get more citations. Journals, search engines, and indexing and abstracting services classify papers using keywords. And this is also a very important part. And so when it comes to choosing keywords, make sure to mention the experimental material, right? For example, protein study, organisms being studied, and also independent and dependent variables, techniques you use to study these things, as well as specific phenomena or for example, a disease that you were looking into. And so some tips, make sure you include relevant and accurate keywords, right? Don't use generic words here. And also check that if the target journal has specific guidelines for keywords, and type the keywords into Google Scholar and see if the results that are returned include similar papers or at least papers that match the subject of the manuscript. So just to summarize some recommendations on how to approach the manuscript, you can start with the figures and tables, which is a summary of your results, right? And they also convey the main message of your research to the general audience. Then you can go on and write the methods part, results, which describes what your study have shown, right? And then the discussion, then you can move on to the conclusion. And at the very end, go back to the very beginning and write a compelling introduction, right? Why should people care and why should they continue reading? Then you write the abstract. That is kind of the juice of the manuscript, right? Summarizes everything for the audience that might also determine whether they will read your manuscript or not. Make sure to select keywords for indexing and then write the acknowledgements as well as the references. So now I'm happy to open the floor to questions.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa, for that insightful presentation. Okay, guys. Okay, everyone, we'll now open the floor for questions. Please type your question in the chat box, or you can use raise hand icon, and our team will unmute your microphone. Okay, okay, there's none from participant. While we wait, maybe I would like to start the Q&A with a question of my own, Vanessa. So, it seems that I kind of hard to make a flow for the introduction. So, how important is the logical flow and coherence in my manuscript's argument in the leaving a positive impression for the editors?
So,
Okay.
yeah, thank you for your question. And I just want to mention that a manuscript is like a story, right? You're trying to tell a story to the readers, how you began your journey, right? By saying why you're studying what you're studying. And then you also need to tell the readers why it's important to them. And so to answer your question, it is important to have good flow as well as, you know, a logical flow as well, not just like structure wise. And yeah, make sure you know that you're telling a story here and it should engage your audience because it's pretty much the first thing that people read. And if people can't understand your introduction, it's very hard for them to follow in the subsequent sections, right? Because the introduction typically offers a brief overview of the topic. And if you lose your audience there already, then it's very hard for them to read the entire manuscript.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. Oh, okay, guys, come on, don't be discouraged. Okay, there we have a question from Dika Yunasinulinga. Hi, Vanessa. Thank you for the presentation. I'd like to ask, is there a limit to the number of pages of a good manuscript, and how many figures or tables are considered good? You may answer, Vanessa.
Yeah, so for the first question, whether there's a limit of number of pages, usually if you check for the journal that you submit for, there's an overall word limit. So there's not specifically a page limit, but more like word limit. And in terms of like figures and tables, there's also no general guideline of how many, right? Like I mentioned earlier during the talk that you should not use unnecessary tables or figures, right? When you're designing the figures and tables, you should actually write down the main message for each. And that should serve as a good guideline as to how many you're including. Because sometimes if you present redundant information, then people would think like you didn't think it through, right? Again, a manuscript is a story and each part should serve a unique role in the manuscript.
Vanessa, we have a question from maybe our team. Can you post it in the chat box? Yeah. Yeah, we have a question. The next question is from Professor Agus Rizal. The question is how to avoid the redundancy, text and table or figure in the result section. Please proceed your reply. Thank you.
Yeah. So to avoid that, typically you would generate all the table and figures first. And so you already know what information is included there. And typically I prefer whatever is more easily understood in the form of a table or figure. I would use a table or figure because people typically don't like reading text, right, compared to table and figures, because they really summarize the information for you. And so make sure to do your table and figures first. And you should already know, right, as you write the table legend and also figure legend, what kind of information is included, and avoid, writing the same thing in the text. And so definitely make sure you have them side by side when you're writing, to make sure you don't include the same information again. And I think it's also a good idea to, as you are designing the table and figures, have bullet points in your results, like the text section, right? What you need to still include. And that way it should help. But I think overall, in the very end, the redundancy part comes also in the when you're reviewing your own manuscript, right? When you go through your work again, because typically when you write, you just put down all the information that's in your head onto the page. But when you edit yourself, or like when you have someone edit your work, this is a good opportunity for people to identify the redundancy. Especially make sure to do it maybe a few days after you've written the manuscript, like take your eyes off the screen and return with a fresh pair of eyes to review your work. And there you should be able to identify these redundancies as well.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. Okay, maybe the next question is from Ikra Kausar. The question is, can we add figures in the methods, and what will be the effect of adding figures on the manuscript? Thank you.
So figures should be a standalone part of your manuscript. And a figure is useful when it comes to conveying complex relationships or like workflow. And you should ask yourself this question: can a figure tell a better story than text? If the answer to this question is yes, then you should design a figure. But a lot of work actually goes into designing the figure to actually simplify the process, right? So make sure each of your figure has a main message, and you should always ask, like, collaborators or like people you work with to look at the figure and see what they can tell you about it, whether the figure actually convey the main message. And sorry, what was the second question again? In the method section.
Oh, yeah.
Right, sorry, thank you.
Yes.
So in the method section, a figure can be used to talk about the workflow, right? How the experiment was designed. And I think you don't see figures as much in method section in general, mostly in the results part. But like when used, they typically explain how the procedure looks like. And I think again, you need to ask yourself the question, does the figure tell a better story than using text? And if the answer is yes, then go for a figure.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. That's great. Okay, maybe we have the next question from there's some anonymous name that asks, how deep emotional can you put in the introduction? Maybe when we do the storytelling, we kind of use the emotion, and so how deep the emotional can be put in the introduction?
So sorry, when I just want to clarify that when I said writing a manuscript is like telling a story, I mean that there should be a very clear beginning, a climax, and then an end, right? So meaning you explain to your audience why you started, how you achieved what you have achieved, and what other people can do afterwards. So it shouldn't be emotional in a sense that you shouldn't say like okay, sorry. You can say sentences like, the disease is devastating, right? Because patients typically, live maybe 3 to 5 years upon diagnosis, right? This is something you can highlight when you talk about why people should care about this disease, or like, what you're presenting about this disease. But you shouldn't say like, it's very sad that there's no cure, right? Instead, you should use phrases like, unfortunately, there's no cure for this disease, right? So make sure, just remember that writing a manuscript, it is still academic writing. You should be using formal language, but you can include facts that would make people or help people build the connection to why they should care.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. As we are nearing the end of our Q&A session, maybe we will answer one last question from Dr. Mukhtar. So, is there any other format to build manuscript besides IMRAD method? Maybe you can explain.
Yeah. So typically you would use the IMRAD method unless the journal has like a different guidelines or how to structure your paper. So I think you always need to check with the journal that you like to submit your manuscript, whether they have a preferred method. So I know that there are some journals that kind of switch up. They put results first, right, before the methods. And this really depends on the journal. But in the end, these are essential components of the manuscript, right? Not the order of how they should be presented. So make sure to check journal guidelines as to how to structure your manuscript, but then the manuscript in general contains IMRAD. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you so much, Vanessa, for all the answer. Okay, and I want to thank everyone for their engagement. And don't forget, please fill in the feedback for Vanessa with the link that has been provided by our team in the chat box. Okay, maybe for a few summary or key points from all of this discussion. An article have a main body which shaped as hourglass with the point of IMRAD, introduction, methods, result, and discussion. Okay, don't forget the title is always, author always judge a book by its cover. So don't forget in the title, you use the keywords from your manuscript. And the authorship should be people or person who made a significant contribution from the manuscript. And for the last, be watchful with the used grammar and always check the journal guideline for the for the style from all the journal. Okay. Before we conclude this session, I would like to extend our gratitude to Vanessa for taking the time to address our questions today. Thank you again, Vanessa.
Thank you, and good luck everyone with writing your manuscript. It's a very exciting part of your research.
Of course. Thank you. Okay. Now let's move on to our next session. Okay, our second session, okay, maybe I will greet all the participants today. I hope you are all as excited as I am for the next presentation. We have the privilege of hearing from truly remarkable individual who has made a significant contributions to the research publication. Okay, our next speaker today is Professor Melva Louisa, and she is recognized as a permanent professor in Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia. Okay, she is a research coordinator in the Department of Pharmacology and Therapeutics, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia, and the Secretary for Doctoral Program in Biomedical Sciences, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia. She has 16 years of experience as an editorial board member in the Medical Journal of Indonesia. And I would like to invite Professor Melva to get us on navigating journal selection and preparing a successful submission. Over to you, Professor Melva.
Okay, so thank you, moderator, for the kind introduction. Can I share my slides? Yeah. So good morning, everybody. So I would like to thank the kind introduction, and thank you for inviting me for Medical Journal of Indonesia and Editage. So I want to share actually experience about the navigating journal selection and how to prepare a successful submission. So here is the outline our today's discussion. We are going to talk about the journal selection and the tips to identify predatory journal and how to prepare a manuscript for successful submission. Actually, Vanessa has already given a wonderful talk about the manuscript preparation upfront. Yeah. So this is the criteria. There are 6 criteria to select a journal for our manuscript. The first one is the manuscript topic, which is the aim and scope and the publication types. We need to check it against the aim and scope of our publication and the publication types of the journal that we want to select. And then the second one is the audiences, the specialty, the language that it used, the presentation format, and the scientometrics. The third one is regarding the abstracting and the feasibility of the journal. We need to find out, how about the abstracting and the indexing of the journal that we choose. And then we need to check also about the quality, the communication of the journal. The next thing, and then the most important thing, is about the ethical and legal issues, and also the costs, or what we know as about the article processing charges. And we are going to talk about this 6 criteria one by one. Okay, the first one is about the manuscript topic, the aim and scope, and the publications type. So we need to check the aim and scope of the journal that we choose, which is the inclusion and exclusion criteria to the journals, and the subject coverage of the journals. When we fail to identify our manuscript, whether it matches the aim and scope of the journal or not, then our manuscript can be swiftly rejected by the journal. Now, how do we find and identify the right journal for our manuscript? We can find the similar works to ours by finding it in the references of our manuscript, or by checking in the database for our keywords. So when we write our manuscript, we write several keywords, right? So 5 to 7 keywords. Then we can check it in the databases. Then we will know the similar works to ours. The next thing is we need to identify the publication types. We need to know the editorial policy and about the acceptance of the paper in the journal. For example, there are journals that does not accept review articles. They only accept original articles. Or maybe there are also journals that stated if the authors want to publish studies using in vitro and cell lines, they need to submit at least the use of a minimum of 2 cell lines. So all of that, we can find it in the aim and scope. And also we need to find it in the author guidelines of each journals. So this is the example of the page of the focus and scope from the Medical Journal of Indonesia. The focus of Medical Journal of Indonesia is quite broad, It generated from basic sciences to clinical community, clinical sciences, community, or public health research. And checks, including allergy, cancer, cardiovascular, and so on. So, okay. So here is another example. One of the journal from the Press publisher. What I like about this publisher is that we know the statistic of the article. How many days from the submission to editorial decision, and how many days from the acceptance to publication, so we can measure ourselves when we want to submit to this journal. And they also publish the rejection rate of each journal, which can be our considerations when we submit the manuscript. Okay. Here is one other example from a journal that only publish review articles, perspective, or consensus statements. In most journals, they mostly publish original articles. The review articles may be only about 10 to 20% of all of the contents from the journal. Thus, we need to find this kind of journal to increase our possibility of acceptance of when we write review articles or perspective or consensus statement, and etc. Okay, so here's an example, a journal that titled Expert Opinion on Biological Therapy. So when we only look at the name of the journal, we might think that it only published the opinion and only the expert are welcome. But when we see the aim and scope of the journal, we see that not only they publish a review and expert opinion, but also the original articles can be accepted in this journal. So we need to carefully read the aim and scope of each journal that we target. Okay. The next thing is about audience and usage. Sorry. Okay. Audience and usage, yeah. Regarding to its specialty, we need to consider a journal that is popular to our peer. So I'm really sorry that can you see my slide?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Actually, I have a problem with my. Can I stop share and then I reshare again? Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'm really sorry. Yeah. Okay. So now regarding to the audience and usage. So we need to select the journal that is popular to our peer, which can increase the possibility of citation once the manuscript is published. Yeah. And then we can decide to publish our paper, whether it is in multidisciplinary journal or field-oriented. For me, it may be for whether I want to publish in a health sciences journal or medicine, or only a field-oriented one, like only in the field of pharmacology. So I have an experience when I was rejected from one of the multidisciplinary journal, but it's actually in Q2. But then after the rejection, I rewrote it and resent it to a field-oriented journal, Q1, and then was accepted. So actually acceptance is also can be determined by whether the paper or the journal is multidisciplinary one or a field-oriented one. And then regarding the English and non-English journal. A journal that is from a native English country like a USA or the British often rejected the manuscript early based on that they say that they cannot understand the English that we use. That's why we need to prepare our manuscript carefully before submitting it to the journal. Yeah. So whether our study is about the local problem based or it can be generated to international society. So we need to consider also about that. For example, if we want to submit a study about malaria, and then we submit it to, for instance, Kobe Medical Journal, for instance. Maybe we get rejected because it does not relate to the problems of their readers. Yeah. So regarding the presentation format, it can be online or print edition or open access only or abstract only, or it offers title only, or whether the journal also published in social media like in LinkedIn, in X, in Kudos, and etc. The next thing we need to also consider the scientometrics about the impact factor, journal citation index, a journal citation report, H index, SJR, etc. So Web of Science actually releasing the impact factor and journal citation indicator. Yeah. Journal impact factor is defined as the average number of times article from the journal which has been published in the past 2 years has been cited in the present year by the journals indexed by the Web of Science. But then the criticism it received because it only used the 2-year window. And then it comes from a limited journals that only indexed by the Web of Science. Now they releasing the 5-year impact factor that present the last 5-year citations. And because of this criticism, the Web of Science now introducing a journal citation and indicator, which sums up the citation across the 4-year period following publication, including the current year. This is one of the example of the calculation of impact factor. So the impact factor of the journal in the 2018 is a cited count in 2018 of papers published in 2017 and 2016, divided by the number of papers published in 2017 and 2016. And now the Web of Science releasing of both metrics, the impact factors, as well as the journal citation indicators. Now about the H index. Yeah, maybe we are more familiar with the H index. H index is actually an alternative to impact factors. This is a well-established tool for measuring scientific performance. Developed by a physicist. Here, H index is a measure of both quality and quantity of the publications. H index value of X is obtained by a journal that has X publication that have all been cited at least X times. So when a journal have an H index value of 20, it means that 20 of its articles have been cited at least 20 times. And H index of 10 would indicate that 10 articles that has been cited at least 10 times. H index can be used in many databases, not only in Web of Science, but Thomson, Elsevier, Scopus, or Google Scholar. H index metric is not limited to a fixed time period. The citation window can be set at whether the time frame is possible. We can also have a 10-year H index, and it's given for a given discipline. And since the H index is not based upon the mean, H index emphasizes of a sustained and durable performance rather than one-hit wonders. As such, it more accurately reflects the unit of analysis, which is journals rather than individual articles. Yeah. So the next one, we also know about the SGR, yeah, the metrics of SGR or SIMAGO journal and country rank. It expresses the average number of weighted citations received in the selected year by the documents published in the selected journal in the 3 previous years. So it weighted the citation received in the year X to documents published in the journal in the year X-1, X-2, and X-3. So this is resembling the impact factors. The difference is that the impact factors is not useful for comparing disciplines. We can only compare the impact factors for the journals within the same field, while the SGR has been normalized to for account of the differences between the disciplines. So here is the metrics for Medical Journal of Indonesia. It has H index of 13 and the SGR of 0.17. And it corresponds to the quartile 4 of the discipline of medicine. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So the next, we can find the metrics of the H index and SGR of the many journals in the simago.com, along with its quartiles, quartiles, and its respective discipline. So the next point that we need to consider the abstracting and the indexing. Most biomedical researchers will always use the PubMed and Medline, which is beneficial for our study to be cited in a systematic review. Other indexing surface, such as Scopus and Embase, can also be used. However, this indexing surface include many disciplines, not only in health and biomedicines, but also in social science, in engineering, etc. And there are also free search engines that provides abstracting and indexing, such as Google Scholar and Cyrus. So now the quality of the journals. Actually, the quality of journal lies in the review process. Here is the common peer review process. The authors submit their manuscript, then it will undergo the triage process, which is in the initial in-house. The manuscript can be sent back to the authors for completion or rejected without external review, or directly sent to the external reviewer. The reviewers then submit their assessment of report, which can help the editor make the decision. This decision can be made and communicated to the authors and the reviewers. And our job is to identify how the peer review process in our target journal. So here's the example of peer review process from the Bentham Science group. After the screening from the in-house, it will be set into 2 reviewers, and the result can be revised or reject or undergo second round of review before the editor-in-chief can conclude to rejection or acceptance of the manuscript. Here is another example of peer review process from the Taylor and Francis group, which is almost the same as the previous one, where it needs a minimum of 2 reviewers to make a recommendation before a paper can be accepted or rejected. So a peer review process can be in the form of open process with no blinding, where both the reviewers know who the authors and vice versa, where in the single blind, the reviewers know who the author is, but the authors did not know who the reviewer is. And there are also the type of open review, like the F1000 research, where the review is fully open. The reports of the review published alongside the article, alongside the reviewer names and the affiliation. So after the peer review, editor can recommend the decision whether to accept and publish as is, which is almost never happen in a good peer review journal. And then can accept with an optional minor revision, or to revise with a mandatory minor revision, revise with a mandatory major revisions, which sometimes include additional experiments maybe. And this takes a longer time than a mandatory minor revision. Or to reject, but the editor encourage resubmission after the substantive changes. Or maybe the last one is too strongly against publication. So we change the journal. So how to deal with reviews? An author can influence the outcome of the reviews favorably by suggesting the list of suitable and unsuitable reviewers. So as we can see that here, that author-suggested reviewers can increase the rate of acceptance. So when we are given the chance to choose our reviewers, please we choose our reviewer wisely to reduce the chance of rejection. So the next criteria for consideration is publisher of a journal. Journal published by a prestigious publisher implies experience, precision, and quality. But publisher rarely could interfere with the scientific process in the manuscript. However, it might happen in a less prestigious journal. And then there comes about the stability of a journal. We know a DOI, or a digital object identifier, a unique digit signature of each paper. It helps to locate the paper in the internet. So if the URL of the paper gets changed, registered DOI is stable for locating papers in the internet by adding DOI to the number of the end of http://dx.doi.org. And coverage of journal by indexing services such as PubMed. We know the PubMed ID also, the Scopus ID could be also as important as a DOI. Okay. And then there comes the communication with the journal. This is also important. A user-friendly website where we can easily find the aim and scope of the journal, author guidelines, templates, past content. This is very important. Then it also help if we can suggest desired or undesired reviewers. Alerting service is also important. The alert should not only be on the website or in the system only, but it helps when the alert also CC to our email. Then we can also send feedback regarding the peer review quality and the submission service to journals. Some journals may also provide English editing service and plagiarism checker with some extra charges. Another important criteria is about the ethical and legal issues. The confidentiality of our data and communication with the reviewers should be kept by the journal. And then the scientific and publication ethics, which includes the data fabrication, falsification, duplicate publication, salami papers, and others. And many journals are members of a Committee on Publication Ethics, or COPE, who provide guidelines and consultation about controversial ethical issues for the member journals. Yeah. And then the medical ethics, which includes the ethical guidelines on human or animal subjects, registration of clinical trials, and financial support. Conflict of interest and the copyright statement should be also clearly described and declared by the journal. And the last one is about the cost, yeah, or article processing charges. Yeah, a good journal mostly have a high cost of article processing charges. Yeah, but there are also journals that offers free submission and affordable payment. Or there are also journals that offer payments for open access only. But if we choose to publish the abstract only or title only, and then we can pay a limited publishing fee to the journal. And also payment for colored pictures and language editing, and sometimes animated abstract or video abstract, etc. And there are also journals that offers fee waiver or discounts, maybe for the middle income countries, low income countries, or sometimes WHO supported studies, etc. Yeah, so this is a quick tips, yeah, to summarize for a journal selection. The first one, we need to make a list of the journals available, the possible journals, determine the impact and the scientometrics of the journals, make sure that the journal scope and policies meets our manuscript and our needs, and then we check the journal requirements, collect the journal's peer review process, and then check the instruction for authors thoroughly. And then what about the predatory journals, which is called fraudulent, deceptive, or pseudo journals, publication that claim to be legitimate scholarly journals, however, they may misrepresent their publishing practice. Some common forms of predatory publishing practices: falsely claiming to provide peer review, hiding information about the article processing charges, and misrepresenting members of the editorial board, and other violations of copyright or scholarly ethics. Yeah, so this is some common characteristic of predatory journals. Maybe we can reread it in this paper. Then it claims to be a peer-reviewed, open access publication, but does not provide adequate peer review And sometimes predatory journal, they use templates as their peer review report. And then there are also citation metrics that cannot be verified, unrealistic timeline for publication. It asks for the article processing charges upper hand, and then the most important is actually they don't have the a good peer review process. And why we should avoid submitting to predatory journals? Because fake peer review undermines the scientific conversation and allow misinformation to enter the scientific community. It can make our research harder to find and harder to be cited by others. And we can lose our work when maybe it is taken down by the journals or by the journals and the internet. Okay, so here are the tips to identify the predatory journals. We need to evaluate the journal website, whether is it professional or not. Look up the previous issues to the journals, and check the editorial board members, whether they are well-known researchers and whether they are affiliated with professional bodies like COPE or the OAJ. And then we need to check and recheck again the member listing of the organization site, or maybe we can contact them directly. So here are the several website and tools that we can help for journal targeting. For instance, the Elsevier, Springer, Wiley. Yeah, if we type our keyword or title or abstract, then we will be given options of the journal within this publisher. Yeah, and we have also a website for the list of potential predatory publishers, such as Bill's list or Cable's blacklist. And here are how we prepare our manuscript for successful submission. We need to choose the right journal. We need to read carefully author guidelines as peer review process, study the journal style, prepare all the necessary documents, ethics, and supplementary materials, proofread and edit your manuscript, write a cover letter, and then we need to submit with confidence. Yeah. Here are the 10 most frequent reasons for a manuscript rejection: inappropriate statistic, interpretation of over-interpretation of results, inappropriate instrumentation, too small of a sample size, difficult to follow of a text, insufficient problem statement, incomplete literature, insufficient data that are presented, and defective tables or figures. And there are top 10 reasons why manuscripts are not published. Here I added from the respiratory care. Number 10 is pick the wrong journal. And number 9 is submitting a manuscript in a format that does not match that the journal published, not following the manuscript preparation instruction, poor writing, getting carried away with discussions, suboptimal reporting results, inadequate description of methods, poor study design, failure to revise and resubmit following peer review, and number 1 is failure to write and submit a full manuscript after the presentation of the abstract. So as a summary, publishing in a peer review high quality journal is a gold standard method for disseminating our scientific work. And choosing the right journal is one of the most important and difficult aspects of publishing research results. Submitting to inappropriate journal is one of the most common reasons for fast rejection of our manuscript, resulting in the time wasted by the authors and journal editors. Most important factors of journal targeting are the journal characteristics, fast feasibility, and the author's priorities. And regarding to the successful submission, manuscript rejection, most of which are potentially avoidable as long as the authors can prepare for the scientific publishing process carefully. So thank you, and then I can invite for discussions. Thank you, Dr. Windu.
Okay, thank you, Professor Melva, for that informative talk. We will now move on to the Q&A session. And if anyone has questions, please type them in the chat box. Or if you would like to ask your question verbally, please use the raise hand icon. Okay, our first question comes from Berlian Arya Devi. Dear Professor Melva, thank you for the concise presentation. I would like to ask two questions. The first one is there any consideration in choosing whether we choose to publish in open access journal or non-open access? And the second one is you talk about how to select the appropriate journals for our manuscript based on your experience. How do you look for these journals other than from the Simago website? Simago website. Okay. Maybe thank you. And Professor Melva, you may proceed with your reply.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Berlian, for the questions. So, regarding the open access and non-open access journals, of course, if we want to choose, we need to choose the open access one because it increases the possibility of our paper to be cited by others, right? So if the readers can only read the title or the abstract, they might not study. But then if they have all of the information and then in open access, our possibility of to get cited is high. But then sometimes the high quality journals is very expensive, yeah. That's when we choose the non-open access one because of the limitation maybe on the budget and etc. But if we have enough budget, we need to choose the open access one. Okay, and then so select the appropriate journals. Aside from the Simago web, we need to find it in the reference of our study actually. So that's when our we need to list, yeah, which one the ones that we cite most, yeah. So that might be the right journal to our study. And then aside from the Simago, we can check the PubMed or some publishers and indexing service that are high quality, such as Embase, yeah, or other high quality. And then we have the tools to check whether they are a predatory one or not. I hope that answers your question, Dr. Berlian. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Professor Melva. We have the next question from Muhammad Rizky Triyono. As you mentioned earlier about multidiscipline and field-oriented, is there any tips whether we should consider or choose first the multidiscipline or field-oriented journal to increase the possibility and chance of acceptance? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rizky. When we choose the multidiscipline one, actually when the benefit of the study is offered to a multidiscipline group, yeah, rather than only in a limited group. So maybe if we study about, for instance, the vitamin D in diabetes mellitus, maybe we can publish it in a multidisciplinary one because almost every discipline can read and have the benefit of when they are reading the journals. But then if I say that the mechanism of action of this drug is from the PPAR gamma 1 and then it will reduce the expression of this gene, yeah. So maybe it is not good if we put it on the multidisciplinary one because the benefit of the readers, the benefit offered for the readers will be reduced. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Actually, if we write in the multidisciplinary and then in the field oriented, it is also different with the language. Yeah, we have to apa sih namanya, menyesuaikan apa namanya, the language should be uh, apa ya, should be determined based on the
Adjust
type.
maybe.
Yeah, adjusted based on the type of journal. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Professor Melva. We have the last question from Ikra Kausa. The question is about the rate of acceptance of manuscript by free journal and paid journal. Is there any different rate maybe?
Acceptance, yeah, I'm not sure about the acceptance because but then about the time need for peer review, it's for the pre-journal is very, very long, yeah, because maybe the editors is maybe paid by a university maybe, or foundation maybe, yeah, and then maybe the journal comes as a second job for the editorial board. But then for the paid journal, they have a professional one that is searching for the peer review ones, and then they have maybe language editing service, and then everything that is done professionally. That's why it is high in cost regarding to the time it takes. It's shorter for the paid one, but then I'm not sure about the acceptance. I think it's this almost the same, yeah. But then maybe it's also lower for the free one because many many more journals, many more authors will submit to the free one. But don't get discouraged, yeah, Dr. Ikra, yeah. Yeah, just we try.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor Melva. Unfortunately, we have run out of time for further question. Maybe I'll say the summary or key points from this discussion. So journal selection, you should check the aim and scope for each journal, inclusion and the exclusion criteria from each journal, and check the references you are using and databases that you have. And make sure the type of publication in your manuscript. Okay, and you should check all the quality of journals from its peer review processes and publishers, the stability, and the ethical and legal issue. And of course, you should adjust it with your budget. And always remember to avoid the predatory journals for its disadvantages, and identify predatory journals with the common characteristic that have been stated, and by evaluate maybe from journal's website, reviews issues, editorial members, and their affiliation. Okay, maybe that's all from all this discussion. I want to thank for Professor Melva for the insightful discussion and everyone for their participation. And your question have added valuable insights to our discussion today. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Okay, now let's proceed to our third session. I'm excited to introduce our next speaker, Professor Rianto Setiabudy. Professor Rianto is a respected figure in the field of ethics in research publication. With a rich background in ethical research, Professor Rianto brings extensive experience and profound insights to our gathering today. He has been a member of the National Health Research and Development Ethics Committee since 2008, and he once served as head of Health Research Ethics Committee, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia Cipto Mangunkusumo Hospitals from 2011 until 2017. Okay, now let's give him our full attention as he shares his insights on publication ethics. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Professor Rianto.
Okay, let me start my speech. First of all, I would like to express my sincere thanks to the organizing committee for inviting me to participate in this important scientific event this morning. By the way, can you hear my voice clearly?
Yes, we can, Professor.
Okay. Unlike the usual topic in the discussion that involves the ethics, usually we talk about the ethics in doing research involving human subject. But this morning we talk a little bit different because I was instructed to by the organizing committee to discuss something related to ethics in publication. Okay, what is actually the common? I just would before I go further into the material to be discussed tomorrow, I just would like to explain that the common issue related to the sorry. Related to the publication ethics is data fabrication and data falsification. The second one is plagiarism. The third one is authorship, protection of confidentiality, salami publication, and many others. But let me invite you to see the outline of the discussion we are going to have this morning. The first one is authorship. The second one is maintaining the confidentiality and respecting the privacy of research subjects. The third one is protection of published article. The fourth is conflict of interest. And the last one is plagiarism. Let me let me start with authorship. Yeah. Actually, we can ask questions like this. Who are eligible to be listed in the author list? Those who are eligible are they who give, the first one is significant intellectual contribution. For example, it could be research idea. The second one is trial design, data analysis, or data interpretation. Significant intellectual contribution. The second one are those who give critical suggestions, correction, or valuable comments to the manuscript. The third one is those who give consent to the final decision for publication, whether or not the publication can be sent for publication. And the last one is those who give agreement to take the responsibility on the accuracy and integrity of the publication. Yeah. And who can be granted an acknowledgement? People who are granted an acknowledgement are usually those who are ineligible for to be listed in the team of the authors, but they have contributed something. These are those who give secretarial assistance or who provides funds, study drugs, and other research facility, for example, instruments or allowing to use lab facilities or something like that. The third one is those who give permission to carry out trial in a particular site, for example, in a ward, in a hospital, for example, or who give minor intellectual contribution, or who provide linguistic correction, for example, in improving the grammar or writing in English or something like that. And let's go to the second point, maintaining confidentiality of patient identity and respecting their privacy. Yeah. What kind of subjects data that need to be kept in confidentiality? The first one is any information about participating the subject that may help to reveal who they are. Yeah, and this may include the name. Therefore, in doing research in publication, we never reveal the full name of the subjects. Only if necessary, we use code or initials. The second one is address, because by knowing the address, quite often we can identify who the subjects are. And photograph. Let me give you an example of the photograph, something like this. So if we look at this photograph, yeah, we can say easily that it is not difficult for us to identify who the patient is, because the photograph reveals very frankly, very clear, yeah, the identity of the patient actually, especially for those who by chance know or get acquaintance with the patients. If there is no other way to if we cannot avoid exposing this kind of figure, then we must make sure that we have asked informed consent. And there is often question, what kind of protection we can give for the patient? Can we avoid exposing a figure like this? Now, let us look at the, actually, I would say, this figure, the writer of this manuscript actually want to show the hemiparesis of the facial nerve on the left side, actually. Yeah. But in pursuing this objective, he or she can also do it in this way. This is not a photograph, actually, but this is kind of a sketch or something like this. But it is not difficult for us to understand that the if you look at the face of the subject here, it is not difficult to see that there is a paresis on the right side of the patient's face, the left side here. And by doing this, we can do a kind of protection, not showing the identity of the patients as what has been shown in the previous figure. And this one is also better because it is more difficult for us to identify who the patient is. Yeah. But on the right side figure, we can still hear, we can still see here that because of this figure reflects the full face of the patients, it is still easier to identify the patient's identity. Now, retraction of a published article. When do a journal editors need to consider to retract a published article? The first one, if there is strong evidence that there is evidence of data fabrication, falsification, manipulation, or other signs of fraud. The second one, if they find evidence of plagiarism. The third one is unauthorized use of biological materials such as serum, urine, paraffin blocks, and etc., or the violation of copyright. Now, the next one is the data of the research conclusion are likely to endanger the society or causing chaos. 6, when the study was conducted unethically, and if the writers fail to disclose serious problem related to a conflict of interest. So the sequence of a publication retraction is, usually it is started by the expression of doubt by the readers of the journal. Then it goes to the next step is the letter of concern issued by the journal editors. And they usually wait for an acceptable time for the writer to give a response. And if there is no response, or the response is given but the answer is unsatisfactory, then the editors can consider to do a retraction. Now, let me give you an example. This is something that occurred several years ago, and this is something occurred in a researcher in the Seoul National University in the South Korea, Professor Huang. In the year of 2004 and 2005, there was a publication in the Science. The name of the journal is Science. That Professor Huang was able to make 11 embryonic stem cells from human blastocysts. Later on, he was found violating ethical standards because he obtained the ovum in an unethical way. And it was also known that he did fabrication and manipulation of the data. And later he got sanctions, dismissed from the Seoul National University, retraction of his article from the Science, and 2 years of imprisonment. That is what I know from the journal. This is the name of the or the title of the publication he made. Evidence of pluripotent human embryonic stem cell. You can see here that it is published in the year of 2004. And this is what he published in the next year, patient-specific embryonic stem cells derived from human somatic cell nuclear transfer blastocysts, published in 2005. Yeah. And also in Science. And this is the second example. In March 2013, there is an Indonesian scientist. His name is Professor N. Yeah. He published an article entitled Serological Evidence of Ebola Virus Infection in Indonesian Orangutans. Yeah. Published in PLOS ONE in the year of 2005. And the writer, Professor N, reported that during the period of 2005 and 2006, his research team, captured 353 orangutans in Kalimantan jungle, examined their blood sample, and the result was spectacular. He found that more than 18% of the orangutans were infected by the Ebola virus, and more than 1% of the infected by Marburg virus. Later on, he explained also that these animals were caged for 6 months and released after being treated. Yeah. This article, after publication, has triggered a scientist living in the United Kingdom. His name is Vincent Neyman. He's a scientist working for the Oxford University, who previously, the scientist, has been able to work in Kalimantan for the Borneo Orangutan Society. Yeah. Both taking care for the health of the orangutan, and then he later on returned to the United Kingdom. Then he asked in the PLOS, from which area did Professor N capture the 353 orangutans? Where did he quarantine them? How many employees were hired by Professor N to quarantine this animal for 6 months? Since the writer did not respond, +1 then issued a letter of concern directed to Professor N. What actually happened? Later on, it was clear that the capture and the quarantine of the orangutan by the writers never occurred. This is something a lie. And the writer obtained the leftover biological materials from a lab located in Surabaya, and then Professor N analyzed them in the lab without authorization of the owner. In this case, the owner is Borneo Orangutan Society. Failing to get the satisfactory answer from the writer later on, Dr. Neyman suggested a reflection to the article. Now, conflict of interest. Yeah. Conflict of interest in publication. But our question is, how does it occur? It often occurs when the writer gets financial support. Financial support, for example, for research, for traveling, for publication, attending scientific events, seminar, sightseeing, etc. It may also occur when the writer of the review or the reviewers of this manuscript own stocks of the sponsoring company, or the journal involved gets many advertisements from the sponsor related to the promotion of one or more of its products. So what is wrong with the conflict of interest? Actually, conflict of interest is not necessarily wrong, but it is very close to it. And conflict of interest is commonly occurred in the decision of decision makers, for example, lawyers, doctors, researchers, journal editors, ethics committee, opinion leaders, etc. Though conflict of interest is only a potential problem, it instantly turns to ethical or legal violation if professional decision is distorted by a secondary interest. Now a little bit about plagiarism. Yeah. Plagiarism is copying or stealing someone else's work or idea and claiming for presenting them as they were your own. Yeah. So how to avoid the negative impact of conflict of interest? The most important step is to avoid them. If for certain reason we cannot do it, we cannot avoid them, we have to make a disclosure. The third one is to abstain, and the fourth one, ask assistance of an independent body to replace the related person. The next question is why we cannot tolerate plagiarism. The first is a plagiarist is a thief actually. In Bahasa we say it pencuri, who steal the property of the others and behaves as if he is the owner of what he stole. The second one is the context of career. In the context of career development, the plagiarist may easily get promotion without having to spend much time and effort. And the third one is plagiarism leads to an unfair competition, which favors the dishonest writers. And the scope of plagiarism could involve copying, citing, paraphrasing any part of an article without giving credits to the owner of the data, purchasing of an unpublished article, allowing other people to write a scientific article by the name of the plagiarist, or practicing ghost writing. So the conclusion is data fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism are a serious ethical violation in preparing publication. The second one is honesty and objectivity of the writers are of paramount importance in data analysis, discussion, and drawing conclusion. The third one is writers are obliged to maintain confidentiality and to respect the privacy of research subjects.
It's 7 more.
The fourth, the ethical standard related to authorship must be respected by the writers. Conflict of interest is a major issue in publication ethics that must be handled carefully by the writers, journal editors, and the peers reviewers as well. And finally, all stakeholders involved in the process of publication must assure that the accuracy and objectivity of a scientific publication should not be tarnished by secondary interest. Thank you so much for your kind attention. And with this, I come to the end of my talk. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Rianto, for that great presentation. It's very concise, but very necessary for all of the authors and researchers to know about publication ethics. Yeah, and I hope all of you found the presentation informative and insightful. Now we'll move on to the Q&A session for this session. Okay, anyone? Okay, we have the first question from Muhammad Rizky Triyono. The first one is, for retrospective cohort research with large data, is informed consent required, considering the obstacles in contacting the patients or patient's family? And for the second question, for case report research, is ethical clearance from hospital and informed consent from the patient required, because some journals or publishers ask for the ethics from the hospital and some don't. What should be done? Okay, thank you, Professor. You may answer the question.
Unfortunately, I get a phone call. Can you repeat the first question, please?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay, for the first question, yes. For the retrospective cohort research with large data, is informed consent required, Prof? Because the obstacles in the contacting the patient and the patient's family.
Okay. If possible, every studies involving human subject, we have to ask informed consent. But we understand in certain situations, it is impossible to ask the informed consent, right? Yeah, cohort retrospective, for example. Quite often, we do not have the idea to write an article of this. Later on, the idea may appear later on. So there is no informed consent. Or probably, if you want to ask informed consent, the patient may already have passed away, right? So in this case, the most important thing is we have to maintain the confidentiality in such a way that nobody can identify who is the owner of those data. In other words, we have to keep in confidentiality the name of the patient. The data could be extracted because it is used for humanity, right? It is useful, okay? But on the other side, we have to keep the owner of the data, the name, in confidentiality. Okay? Did I answer your question?
Okay, is that okay? If Dr. Muhammad Rizky, if you find it need more explanation, you can chat again in the type box, in the chat box.
Yeah, there are two questions.
Maybe we can.
The second one.
Yes, maybe you can answer the second one. For the case report research, is ethical clearance from the hospital and informed consent from the patient required, Prof? Because some journals or publishers ask for the ethics from the hospital and some don't.
Case report is actually not included in the scientific study. It is not research actually. It is just want to show that there is something interesting that occurs in the daily practice that may probably induce research idea later on. Now, in this case, actually, an informed consent is not required actually. Yeah, but in this case, it is better for us to see if the journal require it. Then it is not difficult, I suppose, to write to the ethics committee in the respective hospital, and probably the ethics committee may issue a letter saying that for study like this, for a publication like this, then informed consent is not required, or probably ethical approval is also not required. Yeah, but that depends very much on the policy of each journal. That is what I think. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor. That's quite insightful. Maybe for the edition, Prof, there are many resources that use a secondary data from a database. Is that in that kind of resource, do they have to add the ethical clearance, or ethical from the ethic board member?
Usually not, but in one condition, that the scientist or the researcher who use this data must do everything possible to keep in confidentiality the name of the patients who owned the data.
Okay, thank you, Prof. So the key point is make it confidential for researcher only.
The data is useful for humanity, but the privacy of the patients and the confidentiality should be maintained.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Okay, we proceed to the next question from Dr. Muhtar. Okay, thank you for your presentation. I want to ask about images. When writing articles, is it permissible to display images from published articles with citation, or do we have to create our own image? Maybe that's the question. Thank you. You may answer, Prof.
Okay, you may take the data that is already appeared in the publication, written by somebody else. But what we have to do is you must give credits to the owner of the data by citing the mentioning the from where you get the data. Yeah, and then the other thing you have to do is do the paraphrasing. You have to paraphrase it. In other words, in bahasa we say tulis kembali dengan kata-kata kita sendiri. Write it again in your own words. So you do not take it as such verbatimly, but you write it with your own without distorting the original meaning. Yeah, and you give the number of the citation or something like that. It's okay.
Okay. I think that's all. Professor, thank you so much. As we are nearing the end of our Q&A session, and I want to thank everyone for their engagement. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but maybe if you have any other question, you still can type in the chat box, and our speakers will try to answer in the chat box. Okay, for the summary or key points from this discussion, always remember the common and serious ethical violations such as data fabrications, falsifications, plagiarism, authorship, confidentiality, and salami publication. Always and make sure the informed consent and the data you are using always maintain the confidentiality, and make sure to fulfill the requirements to be the authors for all the articles, and be careful the cause of the article retraction in the future. Maybe that's all, and we conclude this session. Again, I would like to extend our gratitude to Professor Rianto for taking the time to address our question today. Thank you, Prof. Okay. And I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the Medical Journal of Indonesia and Editage for their collaboration in organizing this webinar. Okay. Now let's move on to our final session. I would like to invite invite Dr. Jacob Wickham to discuss our next topic. So Dr. Jacob is an academic trainer at Editage, a senior managing editor of the journal Integrative Zoology, senior researchers at EN Seversoy Institute of Ecology and Evolution, Russian Academy of Sciences, and adjunct professor at the Department of Entomology in Rutgers University. Dr. Jacob has over 15 years of experience in academic publishing and had published several papers in high-impact journals. And Dr. Jacob has gained a lot of valuable experience in research and journal publishing over the years, and is passionate about sharing his knowledge with us today to help us in publication journey. And today, Dr. Jacob will be sharing their insights on promoting your research for better visibility. We are indeed privileged to have Dr. Jacob with us today. And without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Jacob and begin our session.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Let me share my screen. Okay, can you see and hear me?
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, great. Let me minimize my little bar here. Okay, now I'd like to share with you, I think this is the fun part of the webinar because you are published or you're almost published, and I'll give you some tips on how to best promote your research just to get not only your work promoted and disseminated to the widest audience possible, but it also can help promote yourself to enhance your career, get more research grants, get more students. And this also helps to get your message across. And you're not alone in promoting your research. Your publishers will help you do it. Your university will help you do it. They can issue a press release about your article. But in the end, it's the citations that count the most. And doing all this extra work will help get your work cited more. So just a brief introduction with Editage. I've been doing a lot of webinars, and they have a very good program on training and helping with today's session, but they also help to bridge the gap between researchers and peer-reviewed journals. And they've helped over 500,000 researchers publish over 2 million papers. So we got about 20 years of experience, and we're here to help with the publication with the scientific community, pharmaceutical community, and academic community. And here's a website for Indonesia researchers. And this is uniquely designed to meet the research needs of the research community in Indonesia. So there's a website there, and then we'll get to the webinar. So yes, you've already introduced me. I've been with the journal Integrative Zoology. This is a Wiley journal. We have some Indonesian authors publishing with us, and we're a top 5% ranked journal, and we help the authors promote their research. We have some enhanced content, for example, graphical abstracts that are used, and this helps to promote research after you're published. So this is a little cartoon. You may have heard like publish or perish in academia. And the pressure is getting higher and higher on researchers, as you can see by this cartoon. It's you have to publish in good journals, and you have to do it frequently. And now in today's day and age, with all the social media and the mass media, you're expected to do all of this and also communicate it well. You want to get the message across about your work and about your paper, and utilizing social media tools and also the even the research community tools like ResearchGate and Mendeley, it's important to have an online presence. So that really describes the challenges that all the researchers face nowadays. So just publishing in high quality journals is not enough anymore. So this helps you become more visible, makes your research more accessible, and help you with your career. It can help you get funding and make a bigger impact. So, and here are some tips on how to make sure you're visible and you can promote yourself. So you want to use your name consistently. The title is very, very important. Even like running head, and then the research communication that happens after you publish. When you are choosing title and keywords, it's very, very important. This is how search engines will find your paper. Sometimes the title is like the last thing we change to a manuscript before we publish it, because we want to have it be accurate, also make it more discoverable. So cite yourself only when it's relevant. So typically you want to keep self-citation down below 10%, even for the journal self-citation. And then make sure that all your data is correct, that your writing is well accessible, it's easily understandable to a broad audience. Don't forget, get yourself out there, present your work at conferences, and then you can promote your work accurately. And I think the most important thing, I'll spend a lot of time on 9 because there's a lot of enhanced content formats that I would recommend that you do, and sometimes it's the choice of the journal that'll help you with that task. And in the end, you want to do good research. That's the most important thing. So just to get some perspective, it's a very crowded research community. So the global scientific population today has over 8 million researchers. And these 8 million researchers are publishing a little bit more than like half a paper per year on average. And that equals, the figure is over 4 million now. And there's a lot of journals as well. So there's over 33,000 journals. A lot of them are indexed in Scopus or in Clarivate JCR. So this is the Web of Science. So you want to target journals that are indexed. Stay away from those predatory journals. You've probably heard about that in the previous webinars. And here's just a cartoon from PhD Comics that you want to make your paper easily understandable and also have some additional graphics, like an infographic or a graphical abstract, to make your paper understandable to a general audience. So here's a professor saying, oh, if you explain everything too well, then everyone will know how you got your results. So you don't want to keep things confusing and opaque. You want to make it as easily understandable as possible. And here's another cartoon. Why aren't scientific articles as popular as Harry Potter? There's graduate students poring over some journals, and they're like, wow, there's some cool stuff in here. And but where? We can't find it. Well, you have a nice graphic, and this is common with a lot of papers. The graphics are great, but the title's difficult. The text is hard to read. It's dense. You have confusing captions. So when you make these extra materials like infographics and graphical abstracts, try to summarize your entire paper in just 1 or 2 graphics with a minimum amount of text. And this can be easily shared on social media. And I'll give you some tips on how to make these extra infographics and graphical abstracts. So in the end, you want to get cited. So a citation is a way to tell researchers where an idea came from. We've already seen a lot of webinars on citation. Well, it generally means your work, someone found it useful and has read your work, and that it points the readers to information to find that source again. So citations are the most important thing in science. So when you promote your work, it helps you stand out, increases the impact of your work. And there are some statistics I'll share with you. Yes, you do get cited more, and you get your paper downloaded way more if you have some enhanced content formats that the journals will use. So, and this can help improve your reputation and set up collaborations for the future. So this was the traditional model of publishing your paper. You have your article, it goes to the authors of other papers. They find your paper useful and they'll cite you. And this is really just a one-way communication. Well, this is ancient history now. So now with enhanced content formats, even like video abstracts, podcasts, press releases from your university or research institute, and then all the social media that you have here. Now you have two-way feedback with the article, and this gets shared to a wider audience, peers, and the public, and policymakers, and then they will access your paper as well. And you may have heard something called the alt metric, and this is a measure of the pickup of your paper in news outlets, on Twitter, and also science news as well. And this will increase the impact of your work, and you'll have wider engagement with a broader audience. So with the addition of these enhanced content formats, you can really have a bigger impact of your work, and it'll impact you, it'll impact the publishers and also the funders and policymakers. So this is a win-win situation. So tip number one, use your name consistently. Distinguish yourself if you have a common name. For example, use your middle initial if you have one. Some indexes will may fail to produce results, a full results list, if you just use a common last name and a single initial. So consistency in your name will help people that are searching for you on databases to find you. And one way to distinguish yourself is ORCID ID, and also Web of Science is now integrated with Publons if you're reviewing papers. This can also go into the Web of Science database for reviews. So some of the journals will actually absolutely require an ORCID ID. Especially in China, a lot of the names are exactly the same. So here the ORCID ID is very, very important. So be consistent with using your name across all your different platforms that you use. I also touched upon titles. Titles are very important. This is another way to label your work, and also you're giving the databases keywords that will help make your paper more discoverable. So you don't want to use generic words. You want to use words that really distinguish your work from other and previous work. And you can test out some keywords on search engines and see if it generates titles of papers. You can look on Google Scholar and use some keywords to see if you get similar papers that are similar to the one that you're trying to publish. You want to communicate succinctly. So some journals will have lay summaries that'll go along with your technical summary. Be prepared to have a running head. Here you'll be limited to maybe only 40 characters, and this will also appear. And then graphical abstracts as well. There's a lot of journals, including Integrative Zoology, that are now using enhanced content formats, and like a visual abstract. This is exactly that. It says one panel summary of your entire paper, and then some minimal text to describe the main take-home message of your research. So these are really good enhanced formats that you can use. So keywords, again, I can't stress the importance of it anymore. It's really just, it's so important to make your work discoverable. And if you repeat the words in your title and the abstract, it's okay. This increases the likelihood your paper will appear at the top of a search engine list. Some journals, you'll fill in the keywords at the time of submission. They'll have like a word bank. They'll have like a predetermined list, and you can just select them. So the key here is to just make your work stand out from previously published work. Citations, if you have to cite yourself, only do it if it's relevant to your current research. So don't cite everything you've ever published, but pointing to previous research will help you get recognized for that research. No more than 10% of your citations should be self-citations. So just be careful, but cite the important work only, or that's most relevant to your paper. Another tip, make sure that your name and affiliation are correct with every paper you publish. We just added up all the publications for the lab I'm a part of. One of the scientists had 20 publications. He used the wrong English name of the institute, and he couldn't get credit for any of his publications because it doesn't show up on Scopus or Web of Science. So make sure that information is correct and that it's displayed correctly in the databases. So also consider sharing your data. A lot of journals recommend data repositories. And for example, GenBank, you share your sequences there on a public database. And then this sharing of your data will ultimately increase your citations. Also check to see if your writing is well accessible. And what I mean by this is that the audience, your target audience, gets reached. There's also consider preprints, but also if you do preprints, make sure you tell the journal that you have already published this as a preprint, because the plagiarism checks, you'll have like 100% text overlap. So you want to warn the editorial office, the journal you send your work to, that you have a preprint. And then there's post-publication repositories. And then after your work is published, consider sending your paper to interested colleagues. Often you'll get a link, and you're allowed to share, even if it's a subscription journal and it's behind a paywall, you'll have your own personal author link to your paper that is valid for like 1 month, and people can access your work for free. So use that window to the maximum benefit. And also consider open access publishing. And there's a couple models for it. There's gold open access route. This is the most expensive. And you can check, I think Indonesia is listed as a country that like plus journals, they can offer cheaper rates for open access publishing. So or your university might have an agreement with the publisher that may reduce the cost of that. And then there's green open access. This you can self-archive on like ResearchGate, but not the final paper. You'll have to self-archive maybe the early view or the accepted article view. And then some of the funding mandates, for example, the United States government, if you work for the US government, publish a paper, it has to be open access, usually after an embargo period of 6 months. So the publisher will have delayed open access, like a 6-month embargo. And then hybrid journals. Most journals are hybrid journals now, where it's subscription based, but you have an open access option. And depending on your funding mandates, you can have open access, immediate open access via your publisher. actually, Integrative Zoology, we help authors. We self-fund at least 12 open access papers per year, because we see the value. You do get cited more, and the paper gets downloaded more if you go open access. So, okay, I'm going to just compare side by side two journals, and one will help you promote your research, and one not so much. So here's Journal A. It's open access. The article processing fees are $2,100. That's reasonable. A lot of the high impact factor journals are $4,000 and even $5,000 now. A good impact factor, and it's peer reviewed. This journal will impact only within your community and just appeal to the niche audience comprising researchers in the same field. So that's Journal A. Well, Journal B, similar journal. It's open access. The impact factor is comparable, and so is the article processing charges. But this journal has video abstracts, infographics. They offer a lay summary, and this enables quick sharing on social media. This journal will help drive a broader impact to wider society and appeal to a diverse audience of media, policymakers, your funders, and even industry. So, which journal should I submit my work to? Journal B will help make the most of your exciting findings. So consider a journal with these not social media, everyone's on social media, but just having these enhanced content formats like video abstracts, graphical abstracts, and infographics. I can't stress the importance enough of how you should get out there and present your work at conferences, especially international conferences. This helps get your work recognized. You can also often, these are the most exciting places to exchange ideas. Often people present their research that's not even published yet, so you can really stay on top of your field, meet journal editors, and this is a great way to get yourself promoted. People will know who you are, and you can also consider creating your own website or a blog to dedicate it to your research and share it. So make sure you include like a QR code to, I don't know, whether it's ResearchGate, Mendeley, somewhere where you can have your publication list or repository. And this is a great way to meet colleagues and promote yourself. Okay, now I'll be spending a lot of time on this tip. So promote your work accurately through social platforms. So you should get a social media profile. You can start with like Twitter, or LinkedIn is also good. Mendeley is a great tool as well. ResearchGate, I mean, they will try to recruit you. They are constantly asking me or any researcher, oh, is this your publication? Is this your publication? And they're so good at finding those publications. They often discover the publications even before the authors know that they're published. As soon as a accepted article becomes available online, it will automatically harvest that paper and then email everyone about it. So yeah, it's an interesting program, and it's free to join. So ResearchGate is good, and then Twitter, Facebook, these are also good. Or you can have a university profile page as well. So these are all good ways to get yourself out in the public. And I think universities are really, they want you to do this. And one question, if a scientist makes a discovery and no one hears about it, can the discovery make a difference? Well, no. You have to get your work noticed and spread on social media and also the mass media. And the publishers will help you do this. You can share an infographic and write a 1 or 2 sentence summary of your paper. And this can be shared by your publisher. You can also consider writing like a blog, or a lot of the publishers, they curate a researcher community page where you can actually write up the backstory behind your research in like about 600 to 700 words, and include an infographic. And this is a really popular way to discuss your work. So again, the answer is no. If you no one understands what you're communicating, has it been communicated? No, you have to be able to explain your work to a lay audience. So this is a cartoon of like how when researchers talk or scientists talk, it's best to be able to communicate to a general audience, and these infographics are the way to do it. So there's a lot of social media, there's mass media, there's science magazines, a lot of like Nature and Science, they have their own media, and then there's social networking sites. And in this ecosystem, you can develop an effective research communication strategy through the use of enhanced content formats to get your message shared. And remember, the publishers are also on social media. They will help you along on this journey. So infographics are very useful. It provides a quick snapshot of an entire research paper. It's consumable and intelligible. The graphical elements can make it more interesting. And since it's just one panel, it allows for easy sharing on social media as like one picture. And it has high recall value, and every infographic should have a key take-home message. And I'll just share with you a couple of the designs here. One is an exploratory design, where it's organized in random order. It allows the user to freely explore the data. Or you may have a narrative style design where the reading direction is like top to bottom and left to right, and this organizes the content in a logical sequence to create story flow. Both have minimum amounts of text, and they try to summarize the paper in the form of images. And you can often summarize a very complex study into something very simple and understandable. You also want to put the title and everything on the infographic. I would try to aim to keep it simple rather than technical, and you can use landscape or portrait. Here's one from Wiley. This is a great template. This should be more of a catchy title. The full title of the manuscript can be down here. Often the titles are very hard to read, so it's good to come up with a catchy title or a news-like title. And then you provide background information, methodology, your key results, and then a key take-home message. And you want to put the DOI number, the link to the actual manuscript, down on the bottom, because ultimately you want people to read your paper. Here's a couple infographics, and these are easy to read. And this one just copied the actual text, and you can see that they have a nice introduction, and they have the methods, and then they have the results here. They use different colors so you can follow it. And then the key take-home message is here, and they actually have a very good cell yield, and it just shows how well this method work to generate stromal cells for regenerative therapies. And this is for the Journal of Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery. So really nice background information, has high recall value, and it has the main points of the paper. So really nice, easy to share on social media. This is a chemistry paper, which has a very difficult to read title, but then it's about nanogold, but it has a nice, catchy, newsy title: "Shine on Black Gold for a Brighter Future," and how this nanogold can be used for like seawater desalination, the generation of fuel from carbon dioxide. So you can actually help mediate climate change through the use of black nanogold. So that's a really nice infographic. And here's another, this is Journal of Neurology, about repeated head traumas, and they did MRIs of active and retired boxers, and they figured out that repeated head trauma reduces the brain volume. So very nice infographics, easy to share on social media. And here's one of the publishers, Royal Society of Chemistry. They'll take the infographic. They may put a link to a news article on it. So here's a Facebook post. And then on Twitter, they also share the same article. And they get shared and liked and gets the message out there. Then there's pickup of the article, which is measured as in the alt metric. And then video summaries, these work even better to showcase your research. And in this, you'll have some help from the publishers sometimes. Otherwise, you have to do it on your own. And it's basically a 2 to 3 minute narrative. This will use animations, motion graphics, and audio. And this should also have minimal text. I would use your infographic. You can pan on that for 30 or 40 seconds as part of the video summary. And I'll just show you some examples of good video summaries. Again, they also give a snapshot of the entire paper. The narrative tone makes it very engaging, and it's easily digestible and consumable. And also these are shared on like YouTube and other social media accounts, and they have very high recall value. And you should keep them to 2 to 3 minutes, but I've seen some longer ones as well that were very effective. And and here's some statistics. This is from Wiley, and you can click on the link to know more about producing video abstracts. So basically, it more than doubles the full text views on Wiley's online library, and also almost 4.5 times higher altmetric attention scores are generated with articles that have the video abstract or video summaries. So this is a very powerful way to communicate your research findings, and they really have a proven impact on article usage metrics. And I think the most important statistic, I'll just tell you orally, you won't see it on the screen. It gets 1.6 times more cited. So it does increase citation in the end. And again, these are published just only online only alongside your article. Same thing with a graphical abstract. So they won't appear in the actual print copy of the journal, but researchers now, when they find articles, they're finding individual articles. So they're no longer going through each volume of a journal title. You have to stand out as an individual paper. And so people are finding research articles through search engines and also through the social media sharing. So you want to put the link to the DOI number on the video abstract, also like on the graphical abstracts or infographics. And they're published alongside the text abstract online. But again, they don't actually appear in the issue. But that's how they find your paper. Advanced Materials is one of the journal titles for Wiley. Here there's a dedicated team that will help you produce a video abstract. This can be based on the information in the article and also extra supporting information you can give the publisher on the research. This was a wonderful video abstract. You can check on the link and watch it on your own. It has a very difficult title, infrared metasurface augmented by deep learning for monitored dynamics between all major classes of biomolecules. Well, what is this paper about? Well, it's about combining AI technology and nanotechnology to develop these new class of sensors that can actually help in medicine and incorporates all the latest technology. So very, very cool research. And you can learn about it in a very easily digestible way. So if you have to do your abstract by yourself, keep it short. Usually 2 minutes, 20 seconds or less is perfect. Use images, make sure you're audible, be natural when you're speaking, be clear and to the point, use minimal text in your slides. And don't forget to include some actual video as well. This can actually be in a narrative format, and I'll show you an example. This is a wonderful video abstract. It's 5 minutes long. It's from Current Biology, and it's about this praying mantis entering the water. And it was very intriguing. He said, "Oh, the key mechanism for the host entry into the water has been wrapped in mystery for over 100 years. So we have no idea why this happens." And then they use a nice infographic that shows the praying mantis getting infected by a worm, and then it goes into the water, where it leaves the praying mantis and enters the aquatic insects, and then continues its life cycle, and then it emerges again, and then gets consumed by the mantis to perpetuate its life cycle. This polarirotaxis, the entering water behavior, is very strange for this terrestrial insect. Then the authors have this nice little narrative, like an interview format, where they talk about the paper and discuss it. And it's a very well done example of a video abstract. And this was very engaging on social media. And you can get a link to it on YouTube, and also on the publisher's webpage. There's a link to the YouTube video. So these get really big pickup. So there's over 2,000 views of this in the Journal of Bone and Joint Surgery. And here's a study that they published. So it has very good pickup. So I would highly consider using a video abstract format. So over 2,000 views in 2 weeks. So the impact, well, yes, there is higher impact when you're using these enhanced content formats. The journal will try to promote it. So here on Facebook and also on Twitter as well, and they can actually post a link to the video on Twitter. So videos get liked or retweeted twice as much. Also, infographics get liked or retweeted twice as much as other photos. And then there's almost 10 times higher, up to 10 times higher, greater interactions with the article. And don't forget to include the link to the article, because ultimately, you have a great video, but you want to have a call to action at the end of it. So encourage people to read the paper. Okay, graphical abstracts. This is one format that's been adopted by Integrative Zoology. Again, this looks like an infographic, but you can, you want to aim to have a one-panel summary of the entire paper with minimal text. And where an abstract, you're limited to 250 words. A graphical abstract, and this is some guidelines that we have for Integrative Zoology. We ask the authors to provide a schematic figure for use as an illustrated abstract to convey the main core message of the paper. And then we ask the authors to provide 2 to 3 sentences, about 500 characters, highlighting the major findings. They're optional at submission, but we require them on revision or just before acceptance. And since we adopted this format 5 years ago, it's been working out great, because the articles get more interaction, they get downloaded more, they make them more visually appealing. Researchers get excited about the material and want to find out more about the articles, and also they're shared on social media if you have a catchy image and then a nice summary of the paper. So here's a couple of examples. Even a review paper here is a great example. They have a nice picture of a lizard, even though they're studying over 4,000 species, and then phylogenetic diagram here, and the main summary of the result. And this is a great way and to send the message out about the paper. Publishers, I interact with the publisher. I recommend some of the papers, especially if they're open access, to go on the publisher's Twitter page, and that can have a big impact. So again, social media. So pick your platform. It can be Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Have a summary ready. Twitter's really nice. You can use pictures. Instagram is also great for that. Facebook, you can post a longer story about your paper there. And then LinkedIn, you can also post a longer story. Consider writing like a blog style summary that you can describe the behind the scenes of your paper. Also keep an eye out. Your publisher may curate a research community, which is like a blog site where researchers can post a blog about their paper. And when you publish, your publisher will tell you about all the opportunities and that you have and the platforms that are available for you to promote your research. So they'll help you along the way. So once you've identified the platform, craft your key message, what you want to talk about. Don't forget to include a link to the published article. Use hashtags for keywords. Mention people whose attention you want. So you can do at Integrative Zoology or at whatever the journal title is. And again, talk about your research journey. People want to hear about the backstory behind your article. And don't forget to have good visuals. So this will help you connect with other researchers, build contacts, promote your research, and might even get you a funding or a new grant, and helps to share your views and stay updated in your field. And finally, the last tip, do good research. Writing a manuscript that is logical and empirical and systematic and is repeatable, this is what really gets you cited. Even if you have no enhanced content formats, good work gets cited, but it has to be discoverable. Don't forget to add a touch of humor. Don't be afraid to say something controversial. Disagreements can be constructive. Well, what gets cited? Review manuscripts on average get cited more than research articles. At Integrative Zoology and a lot of journals, we encourage authors to submit review manuscripts. Sometimes being cited a lot is bad. You may have a controversial study. But in general, review papers get more citations than research articles. And open access will also raise citations. It'll almost double the amount of citations. I always wondered about that, but there is a link to open access and getting cited more. And select your journal well. Approach high impact factor journals. Also approach journals that have enhanced content formats. So you want to select a journal with a good communication strategy. Once your paper has been cited within its first year, it's more likely to accrue more citations. Again, if you want to publish more research on the same topic, do it swiftly after the first publication. Use the momentum. And you want to expand your network of collaborators, be open to collaborate with other co-authors. Create a pool of those that are aware of your work who might cite you. You can send your papers to them, and you can ask contacts of colleagues, well, if it's relevant, to cite your work, if they're working on the same thing. So if you do cite your own work, use your DOI number to describe the location of your paper. And then as you prepare your manuscript for publication, and you want to prepare it for citation as well. Use long titles unless the journals will limit that. This will enable to put more keywords out there. You might not get cited more, but researchers will know that you exist. You can ask questions in your titles. So manuscripts asking questions seem to get cited more. Another strategy, write fewer and larger papers. So there's more content, there's more opportunities for citation. And also the non-specific papers, these general papers aimed at a wider audience. These tend to get cited more than technical papers. Of course, if you get published in Nature and Science or the Proceedings of the National Academy of the United States, those are general journals. So if you have high generality for your research, I would aim for a more general journal. And finally, after you publish, when you're checking the proofs, check your name if it's correct, and also the institutional affiliation is correct, and that your work is correctly described in the databases. Don't be like that one author with using the wrong English name of the institute. And then tell everyone that you published. So not only in your relevant research community, you can also your colleagues that are in the same institute. Also go to your public relations office, the university office, also maybe help you make a news article or a press release to help promote your research. And don't forget to make use of social media and especially Twitter, Facebook, or more of the research-oriented ones like LinkedIn and Mendeley as well. So if you do good research, people should hear about it. So, and these are the criteria of good research. And this wraps up the webinar. And I'm really happy to take some questions now. I feel like in the last 10 years as a journal editor, I've seen the entire landscape is changing. It's going more towards open access and having these enhanced content formats. So choose your journals wisely, and we're here to help you. The journal's here to help you, and their publisher is also here to help you. We're all on the same page. We want to get the message out and distinguish your work to the broadest audience possible. And with
Okay.
that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jacob, for that compelling and informative presentation. Okay, guys, we have a question from Dr. Muhammad Rizky Triyono. The question may be a little out of the topic of presentation, but if you don't mind to answer, the question is based on your institution experience or whether there is any suggestion about the distribution for article processing charge or APC in independent research that doesn't receive any grant or support. Should the entire APC be covered by the first author, or is it typically shared among all of the authors? Maybe you have any insight on how to divide the APC fairly. Thank you.
Yeah, first
You
of all,
may
I would try
proceed.
to negotiate with the publisher even before they send your article for peer review to reduce the fee. There's a lot of special issues that are organized. You may get invited by a guest editor, and sometimes they can give a 50% discount. Make sure you agree with the editor before you send the article for peer review, because even if the guest editor loves your paper, they want to give it a big discount, the publisher won't agree. So make sure you agree beforehand. And also, there's a long list of authors. It should be part of the conversation. Who's going to pay for it? It doesn't necessarily have to be the first or last author. A lot of international collaborations, the funding is different. Your university might have an agreement, so maybe one of the authors, I have a huge discount with Plus, so they'll cover the article processing charges. Make sure in your grants that you put in publication cost as part of the expenditures that are allowed on your grant. I always put in whatever the maximum is. It's usually like a few $1,000s. So those are strategies to reduce the cost, and also check to see if your university has an agreement with the publisher for a discount, or the country gets a discount. There's a list of countries, especially like Plus journals. It may be as cheap as $500 or $800, or it might even be free.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jacob. We have other questions from Professor Agus Rizal. The question is, how important is the impact of social media for publication or a journal? Maybe you can explain more.
Or the what of a journal?
How important is the impact of social media for publication or journals, maybe?
Okay, for the impact on the publication. Well, if you go on to I'll just give an example, Nature Communications. They not only have the social media contacts, they keep track of the alt metric for every article. And so every blog mention, every news organization pickup or science news, they keep track of all that. So it is important, and they if you choose the journal and the publisher, the correct ones, or the ones that can help to promote your research, it's a really good tool that they have in their toolkit to get the message out there. It may also look at the society journals as well. Ultimately, your target audience, you want it to reach the right people as well. So the answer, yes, it is very important to use social media, and the journals and the publishers are out there to help you along with that. So, and they'll instruct you when you send that acceptance letter. They said, don't tell anyone yet. There's an embargo. We haven't published it yet, but the minute it publishes, have a plan ready to share your work.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jack. Okay, as we wait other question from participant, maybe I have a question about the infographic that we share in the social media or platforms. For a published article in the non-open access journal, is there any restriction about the information that we share in the free social media?
Actually, the graphical abstract, it doesn't go for peer review, and the infographics, they don't get peer reviewed. So you do want to edit the information carefully. If you have video abstracts, sometimes you get some help from the publisher. You want to have very nice images. Unfortunately, I've seen a lot of graphical abstracts with a very poor image quality. I mean, they don't go through the peer review screening process. So you want to make sure that these contents are as high quality as possible. So you may want to share it with the co-authors, or even ask the editorial office to help edit the abstract or video graphic. So yeah, it's very important that these are high quality, but they're not peer reviewed. It's more on your shoulders that you get the information right.
Maybe do you have tips for us when we do the infographic or video?
Oh, I've seen some wonderful posters. Check out examples of infographics on the journal's homepages. Just like how you look at a previously published papers of your target journal and see with their format. You can also check out the infographics and also some of the video abstracts. Check out the ones that are cited the most and or downloaded the most. They usually keep track of every journal title will have those. Ultimately, it's the relevance of your work and the quality of your work that it determines the citation. But you can get a lot of downloads from a very, very good infographic.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Jacob. I think we have run out of time for further questions, and I want to thank you again for all the compelling presentation. Okay, for the summary, Dr. Jacob has provided us many tips on getting recognized in academic publications, such as use the name consistently, use a visible title, and by using the keywords, and communicate briefly in your article. Use an easy keywords, and it's okay to repeat it in the title or abstract. If you can, or if you have any other relevant paper, you may cite your own paper. But of course, you have to use the correct data while and publish it in well accessible, such as in an open access publishers. And don't forget to promote it in your conferences, social platforms, or media by using the infographics or video. Okay, and for the last take-home message, always do a good research. Okay, and please, everyone, don't forget to fill in the feedback for Dr. Jacob with the link that has been provided by our team in the chat box. Okay, as we draw near to the conclusion of our webinar today, I would like to express my sincerest gratitude to each and every one of you for your active participation and insightful contributions throughout this session. And of course, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the Medical Journal of Indonesia and Editage for their collaboration in organizing this webinar. And your commitment to supporting researchers and advancing scholarly communication is truly commendable. And it has been an honor to be part of this collaborative effort. Okay, I think and I hope that the discussions and tips and strategies that we have been shared today have provided you with the valuable insights into the complex world of the international journal publishing. From understanding the importance of the choosing the right journal to mastering the art of crafting compelling manuscripts. And we have covered a wide array of topics essential for researchers aiming to disseminate their work effectively on a global scale. Once again, thank you everyone for your presentation and enthusiasm. It has been a pleasure serving as your moderator to this webinar. Wishing you all the very best in your academic endeavors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Windu, for leading our session today. Ladies and gentlemen, as we have finished all of our topics for today, our webinar is finally come to an end. Before we close this webinar, we would like to inform you that we will share the post-test link in the chat room below, and all participants need to fill the link as it is the requirement to get the certificate for SKP for about 3 credits. And lastly, we would like to say thank you for to Editage on this amazing collaboration for this webinar. We also want to like to say thank you to all of our speakers for the insightful sharing session and all participants for coming to our webinar. We hope that this webinar will be helpful on your academic journey in the future. Please inform us. Please inform us if you have any opinion or suggestions, as we are open for any comments, critics, and insight for the better of our event in the future. Let me close this webinar for today. Thank you and have a nice day, everyone.